Wake up, buyer payer people. It's a beautiful day. Go grab yourself another cup of joe and say hello to Jim and Michelle Rhoads on the Buy Here Pay Here Morning Show. Take it away, you two.
Good morning. Happy Frozen Wednesday. So across the U.S., I talked to a dealer by Texas this morning in Pennsylvania. They're frozen. I talked to 3 dealers yesterday in the Southeast. They're all wearing heavy coats.
How much was the one in Pennsylvania?
-5.
-5.
I'm originally from Oklahoma. My mother reported -2 yesterday. We woke up to like 11 degrees here in Utah.
So we're warm.
It's just all across the country. It is cold.
It's a balmy 11 degrees. 11, It was yesterday. This is it's one of the dealers that Jim works with in V8 was saying, oh my gosh, yesterday was this. He lives in Alabama.
Well, actually, it's the Florida Panhandle.
Okay, yeah. And he was like, snow day for the whole family. We went out and we played and we played and we played and we played, because it's like, this is something so many people in the South have really, especially children, never seen.
Sure.
Yeah,
Never
unless their parents drive somewhere to introduce them to snow.
It's true.
This is so it's
yeah.
it's pretty cool.
Imagine the kids having snow in their own backyard.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah,
it's like, Mom, can I make a snowman?
Yeah.
It's fantastic.
Love it. Fun.
All right. Is there anything that we have that's
just V8 announcements? I mean, our V8 folks kind of know what that schedule is, and so we've got a
mastermind coming up though that is accessible to our V8 and our V8 Plus for just January. February, it's separating from just regular V8 Home Group and V8 Plus. And this month, anyone in just V8 Home Group is going to have access to a mastermind.
Right.
One of our dealers has put together a growth business plan for 2025, and dealers are going to be looking at that and asking questions, and it's going to be just a great conversation with a group of dealers talking about, all right, so the whys and the what are you hoping to accomplish, and the I've tried this before and this is what didn't work, and this is what it's going to be a really great conversation.
It's going to be, I would even use the word pivotal for V8, because it's going to a new level with our conversations and virtual gathering. And I just think people will see, oh, wow, this is what virtual meetings can look like. And it's going to be strong.
Yeah. We calendared the next February, March, and April for V8 Plus meetings, and we've got some really good stuff coming up. It's pretty darn exciting. And let's see, anything else?
Let's see. We already have our Friday topic set. I don't have it in front of me, but do you remember what it is?
Yeah, no.
You don't remember?
I'm sorry. I have menopause brain, which means if something goes in, something has to go out. So I keep it all on paper.
Yeah.
And I don't have the paper in front of me.
I remember
so
now.
I posted something on social media.
Yeah.
So
it's lead management and closing.
Oh.
It's conversion. Really, it's about lead conversion. Like,
okay.
What percentage of leads are we converting?
Which is something that's like a huge conversation.
Yeah.
A lot of people that I see that on social, an awful lot. And I was asking Jim this morning around that topic. I'm like, so what is the average? The average in V8, the average and he gave me the number, and I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
It's very, very low. And
so we're going to talk about all the stuff people talk about. Are they bad leads? Are they bogus leads? Are they, why do we have so many leads?
Which is the golden question on that. So we'll be talking about that on Friday. So don't forget to join us. And if you can't join us live, it will be uploaded in the afternoon for our syndicated podcast.
Yeah.
What else? Anything else?
I think that's it. Let's bring in our guest. And let's see if he's wearing blue. I just noticed we're both wearing blue.
He's gray. Good morning, Ken.
Good morning, Michelle and Jim.
Glad to have you here.
Jim,
excited to be here.
Oh, we are so grateful. Do you want to give a little lowdown on who Ken is and how he kind of is part
Ken
of the
is
family
among those people that you kind of know from social media. Like, I've seen his name in the BHPH success group and conversations and this and that in the past. And then some months ago, we put out a post saying, hey, we're looking for V8 moderators. Yep. So anybody who wants to step forward and talk about starting to moderate some V8 groups, we would love to talk to you. When we met Ken, he's a guy who has buy here, pay here experience, retail, lease, service experience, all of it. So we're really fortunate to have somebody like him coming in, being able to contribute his expertise to V8 groups. And then last night he was sitting in one of our V8 groups, and after the thing I said, "Hey, last minute thought, would you want to join our conversation tomorrow morning as a dealer now retiring?"
So willing. Yeah.
He's a retiring dealer, we'll call him, and he can tell that story. But he's kind of in the process of exiting the space slowly. And so anyway, just today I thought, well, he's somebody who knows this segment. He talks the talk in terms of this white hat approach to customers and business, and he also walks the walk. I mean, he definitely is somebody who's done that. So Ken, welcome. Glad to have you here.
Thank you, Jim.
That was a long introduction,
yeah,
but it was a good one.
But I think it's important people know who Ken is. So Ken, I think for today we just want to talk about this idea about who is this customer. There've been some things recently that have come up, and Michelle and I've touched on this kind of thread in the past, but I think today we have a chance to go a little deeper.
Well, and we were talking before is that this question, for everything that we're building in the white hat way track, this is a really foundational thing to understand and to have the same kind of philosophy, and that this is who our customer base is. So we're just really grateful that you're here to talk to us a little bit about. Yeah.
And maybe you could start by giving us an overview. Like, you've done this a long time. You've met with a lot of customers. You've worked with collectors who are working with customers, probably thousands over the years. So the question becomes, kind of the first thing is, what is your general view of who this customer is? Like, what's the profile of the customer that we typically meet in the buy here, pay here space?
Yeah. So typically a buy here, pay here customer is someone that, obviously they've got, less than perfect credit. They've gone through a crisis in their life, or they're actually in a crisis, and so they've got some blemishes on the credit, and maybe they've made some poor decisions or poor choices in the past, or their circumstances have are in a situation where they can't get conventional financing, right? So they're out looking for a means of transportation so that they can do the things that they need to do in their life, whether it's going to doctor visits, work, school, whatever it is. It's typically somebody with bad credit. So that's
yep. And one
customer.
Yeah, and so as far as the reasons that folks find themselves in a tough credit situation can vary. I think what I'm mostly drilling in on as we approach this, it's the lens. We talk about, Michelle and I use the word lens, like what lens do we see the customer through? And I think, in our conversation last night at the V8 meeting, it comes around for dealers, like when you're interviewing people for sales team, collections team, like as you're bringing people onto your team, it's helpful to try to identify that, like, what is the lens that this person that we hire, how do they view the customer that we will be serving and working with every day? And so it's just kind of a reality of that. And I think one of the things, Ken, you've seen it, I'm sure, is that there seems to be a pretty clear line between those dealers who recognize this customer's in a difficult spot. There are going to be dealers who use that position to take advantage. And there are other dealers who kind of take the approach, that the longer game approach that we talk about in White Hat Way, and they're going to have a chance to, be more successful long term. So that's the part I really wanted to focus on today. Like, and thinking about dealers that are brand new to the space, like what do they not recognize? They think, oh, we're gonna finance customers here, we're gonna make a lot of markup and a lot of APR, and we're gonna get rich, right? And then they step in there and realize, oh man, there's a lot to learn about who this customer is and how I can begin to have, success with my portfolio. So that's the part you might talk about, that part of what you've seen about how dealers approach it.
Oh yeah. So, I think that, I talk to a lot of dealers too. And I think that those that are coming into this space, they are thinking that these customers probably have good credit like them, so they're coming in, they're thinking, okay, I'm going to do a deal for this customer, a buy here, pay here deal for this customer. And I'm going to expect them to make their payment early or on time every single week or month, and they're never going to make a mistake. They're never going to need any help. And if they do, they better fix it themselves if the car breaks down, or and I expect them to call me if they got issues,
Sure.
or they can't make their payments. So I think that's kind of what I hear a lot, that dealers think that should happen, what the customer should do. And that's not what typically happens.
Yeah. And, in our group last night, these are dealers that are pretty well established, pretty successful, 500 to 2,000 account portfolios, a lot of cash flow and a lot of history with accounts. And so when I said the thing about, this customer in the buy here, pay here segment, sometimes we just have to accept that they require a degree of hand holding. And pretty much all the dealers, right? All the dealers in this virtual format are like, yeah, you're right. So it's like, that's something that those of us who see success, we see that can sometimes be a separator, is recognizing that the customer's going to require some support. Why? Well, because maybe they're a victim of an education system that never really taught them financing.
Whether it be at home or in the school system. Home, yeah.
Right? So they just don't have the same knowledge about how to manage accounts and credit that some others have. That would be one example. Others maybe know how, but they fell into a really difficult financial situation. Might be a health matter, could be any number of things. I think what I'm trying to get to is it's the lens that we have, that when we look at that customer, do we view them as being, permanently downtrodden, and are they, some of my phrasing and some of the material I've written is like the disadvantaged customer. Do we view them as they're in that place, they're going to be in that place, that's who they'll always be? Or do we view them as being in a temporary situation and we're part of a solution to help them work through it? I can say, Ken, in my experience, both as a dealer and a coach working with lots of dealers over the years, like there's a percentage of the customers who don't necessarily improve their credit. We have dealers who've had decades, multiple generations of families in their customer base, and the customers are perfectly happy to do business there. They pay a higher interest rate. They have a good experience, and they continue. And so some may never improve their credit circumstances. They may never qualify for the the better credit loans. And so I think the question is, how do we support them? I mean, if they're going to be in that situation, and then from a pure business profit standpoint, Ken, how do we as a dealer approach that whole situation from a culture standpoint, and our team and our approach to business and philosophy to give us a chance to be successful? So thinking about the sales side first, like what if you're hiring salespeople, what would you be telling them to understand about the customer they're going to meet?
I think you're right. I think that it really starts with us as the dealers and our organization. And if we as the manager or the dealer or the leader of an organization view the customer a certain way, then that kind of trickles down into our team.
Absolutely.
So for me, I view our customers as as regular human beings have gone through a crisis, or that's going through a crisis, just like we all have gone through crises in our life, and that we need to, number one, show respect and show compassion and understanding, and look at how can we empower as a dealer, how can we empower our team, and also so that they can empower our customers, right? And so
language.
because really it starts with us, and it starts with our mindset, our mindset, of positivity and success, and how do we encourage and really serve this community? Because if you go into buy here, pay here, I mean, it's really, you've got to, you're going to have to do some work. And it's not like you're dealing with a 800 credit score customer, but these are people that are needing some kind of help and support, and your team's got to understand that. Your salesperson's got to understand that. That we're here to serve them, and we're here to help them, and in whatever capacity we can, instead of seeing them as just another number or somebody that or an ATM machine that if they pay, then we're going to make money.
The transactional versus the relational.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Rudy Enriquez, I think it's Rudy E. I'd say you need to have a shepherd's mindset.
That's right.
So, I was just thinking as you were kind of talking about that you don't, if your kids are being difficult, You don't repo, or you don't kick them out.
Fire them.
You don't fire
Lay 'em
them.
off. You're laid off.
It's like if we have more of the mentality that you're part of the family, and I kind of get tired of like join the family. But that it's not just a platitude. It's not just something you say, but it's like you are part of our organization. You are like family. And so how do we help? How do we and developing, how did you in your dealership, it's great to say give them tools and da 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 da. What are specific things that you had in your dealership that were like, here's some tools that I gave my team that they could use?
Yeah. So one of the things that I saw that was a constant with our customers was that they were dealing with either some kind of something at home, whether it's they ended up having some kind of argument in their relationship, they had to move out, or they're dealing with some kind of mental stress or something. And so what I did was I gathered up some resources from my area with basically places that they can go for transitional living, places that can support them with addiction, and places that can help them with utility bills or food or whatever. And so we put together this packet that I gave to all of my collectors, and whenever they heard from a customer that, hey, I'm struggling with this, or this is what's happening in my life, we say, oh, okay, great, let me send you over this packet of information. I recommend reaching out to CCM, or reaching out to this organization over here, and they can support you and help you. Sure. And what I found was that in doing that, the customer not only saw us as where they make their car payment, but also someone that they can rely on, they can trust, and that we're not going to be there to judge them that, hey, you're going through this because you're a horrible person. It's not that, and so it's really helped my collectors and my team be able to show love and compassion towards our customer. It's really helped them, and I'm pretty proud of that.
Yeah, it should be. I think the other thing that I am recognizing is, think about what that feels like to the collector that works for you and your team. Like when they have those resources and we share it freely, like it just, to me, what it says in very clear terms is that Ken, as the dealer principal and the founder owner of this business, from the very top of our company, he really has a desire to support and help people. So there's other ways, more tangible ways, right? And so we start to talk about reinsurance, whether it's warranties or service contracts, or just different ways to support the customer. But not all of it's about the car. That's just the collateral. There's all other kinds of ways that the customer requires some help. And so it's just a matter of kind of being prepared to roll up our sleeves a little bit.
Yeah. Rudy, another comment from him is that I would argue that the more gross you put in a deal, the more flexibility you have, and you have the ability to help customers. So,
I follow the logic. I think you've got, there's some truth to what he's saying. I think you just want to be careful about, there's a give back mentality. We urge a give back mentality around APR. Like, in other words, we'll urge dealers when they're new to set your APR a little high, not necessarily push it to the state cap, but set it on the higher side, round it up a few points above what you were thinking, and then be prepared to use those extra earnings to give back to your entire portfolio. Do all the things that you're talking about, Ken, the things that I can do to give back. And so I think what Rudy's really talking about there is the same thing. I just think that's a kind of a can of worms that we probably should save for another conversation.
Yeah. I wanted to share another one. This is from Crystal Guayo. We are definitely part of the solution to help them get back up. The way to do so is offering continuous financial education. Most consumers do not improve credit, not because they don't want to, but because they lack the knowledge of how to manage revolving credit. Sure. It's not what we say, it's how we say it that will allow us to build that solid relationship. We're looking for which will then make it easier for the collection side. And then Karen piped in and just said, your idea about, we've got this thing that we give. What a fantastic way to help others.
Yeah. And I think it's wonderful. And I think Crystal's spot on about the financial education. We know that financial literacy is a thing, right? Anything we can do to help them. But then I also think, Ken, about those situations that, again, are not it's not a money management thing.
Mhm.
It's not even, sometimes it's not a financial literacy thing. It might not even be an income thing, but it's a problem that the customer's faced with. One of the things I've always said about the customer that we serve, and I mean this with the utmost respect for every one of them, they're human beings like you and me, but it's like they often don't know how to help themselves.
Mhm.
They're faced with a problem, and to you and I, it's a problem we see all the time and we know solutions, but they don't necessarily know how to solve this particular problem, whether it's a car that's not running and it's just out of warranty, or, you could go on and on. We could spend all day talking about all the scenarios that come up for a buy here, pay here deal. But I'm basically saying when the customer faces those roadblocks, it's like, first, maybe it's new to them. And maybe they've never experienced it. They certainly may not have experienced it with you. They may have had it with another dealer. It was an awful experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
But now this is the first time they've really faced it with you and your company. So the question becomes, how do we respond? When, in this case, we're talking more about the collection side, but I think it's a reflection of how do we ultimately have success. And I didn't pull it up, Michelle, but you remember way back, probably in some of our early, 50 episodes, we featured a post from social media that went out from a dealer that we know very well. They've been in business 30 plus years. They do a lot of repeat and referral business. And their collector posted something that basically said, I find that with our customers, sometimes I am helping them. I'll sit with them and help them figure out where to get their car insurance.
Yeah, and then they'll come in and sit down at her desk,
Mhm.
and she will help them fill out the forms for their heat, whatever thing. Or she'll, it's because that.
Yeah.
May I?
Yeah, please.
Okay, thank you. That is, we can give them like, go here, go here, go here, go here. And that is amazing. It just reminds me of Candace Price in Nebraska, who's, honorary White Hat Way dealer. All of it's like, they're about solutions. If they say, I can't do this because of this, even in the sales desk, I can't do this because of this, that it's like, let me help you with that before we do this.
Yeah.
Let me help. And that little extra of, a lot of people, if you're not financially literate, that when you put a big application in front of you too, their brain shuts off. It's like, this is too hard. This is too hard. And so sometimes that support may spill into, if just come, let's figure this out together. And that, imagine the amount of relationship threads you create when you do something like that it's like, oh my gosh. And that's what this dealer's collection manager was like. She's like, they'll come in on a payday and they'll drop off their favorite recipe for this because we're friends. But yeah.
And so let me just say, Ken, like, if I follow the thread that happened in our V8 meeting last night, it's like, dealers are having this conversation. What really brought it about is, what do you guys think about auto pay or convenience fees? And should I chat on the phone when somebody calls in with a payment? Should I talk to them, or should I just keep it short? And obviously what you conclude in that is there's a balance between the efficiency of our time, right? That we're going to be super efficient with our time. Auto pay works great. We get a direct thing and the customer can pay online. And what that sounds like to me is the customer has a relationship with our bank account, not with us. And so now the question becomes, if I'm a collector and I invest a few minutes on the phone listening to somebody tell their story and kind of working through whatever's going on, a couple of things that happen. One, I'm able to log that, kind of know what's happening in the customer's world, so that if there's a difficulty next month, I know what's going on in their world. But also I'm thinking about, how do I, the time that I invest there is, to me, is it inefficient with my time today? Can I now speak to fewer collectors or customers? Do I now need another collector on the team? Maybe. But that investment, what does that translate into repeat and referral business? I mean, it's stuff that's hard to measure, but I think what we're looking forward to do in White Hat Way is being able to start to measure those very things, to say, these are the things that when we can really think long term and we can really support this customer for success, and we can really move our repo rates, we can reduce our repos, and we can, all these kind of things that are real math that really contribute to success, then this is the part that there's a lot of intangibles here that we're talking about. But I think, going back to where we started about who the customer is, I think it's just important to, first of all, see them at the lens. If we just bring an idea that this is a fellow human being who's in a difficult spot, and most people, it also came up last night when I do trainings, Ken, I'll often draw a pie chart on the wall. And when I'm working with somebody new, I say, you can expect to find a small sliver of customers are troublemakers. The same phrase that was used last night.
Every dealer has them.
Like, right?
Yeah.
They're out to take advantage. Obviously, our underwriting process is we're trying to avoid doing business with those folks, but it still happens. And so you just try to bring those relationships to an end as quickly as you can and get away from that. And then there's this larger sliver that might be 30-40% that is what I call high maintenance. They just require a lot of hand holding. They struggle financially and they struggle to figure their own problems out. So they require a good deal of hand holding. And then the rest are no problem at all. We almost never see them unless there's a problem. And so we're happy to support them too. But I think part of the work that Michelle and I are doing with Way is that we're really working to try to create, help dealers create connection. So that's about all this stuff about engagement. How do you keep an ongoing relationship with a customer so that, we talk about it, and you can take this outside of the buy here, pay here business. It's like what we call relationship equity. When we build some equity with this customer, then now it's our hope that when there's a setback, they'll talk to us. They trust us. They know we have their interest in mind. And now our ability to be able to sit with them or talk to them on a phone, FaceTime, virtual, however we talk to them, like we can now have a chance to solve whatever the problem is because they're not afraid of us. Right? They know we're on their side. And so this is why it's an important thing for us to kind of sort out as dealers. But to do that, if you're a brand new dealer, you first have to understand when you step into this business, if you're thinking the customer's going to pay, and then you're just going to, if they don't pay, you're going to enact some punitive measures only, then just you can expect to have a lot of cars, repos in the back row curing out, right? And just understand that's probably going to be the outcome if we don't have support solutions. Because this customer, in my experience, part of what causes them to fall into this credit segment often is they're not real good. They don't have a lot of experience at managing their money and their financial affairs, and so they will. If we're not prepared to support them, then we should probably be prepared to have a lot of repos. You agree? Like that's been your experience?
I totally agree, and like I was saying earlier, we as the dealer or a manager can understand that, but it's important that we hire a team and train our team members to think the same way. Like what you were talking about, the three different slivers of our customer type. A lot of times what I've seen in the past in my business is that, if I don't do the right training or enough training, my collectors seem to think that everybody has to be a great paying customer or else this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to repo you. And we've got to train them that, hey, there's three sides to this pie. You got, like what you said, you got the easy ones that you work with, you got the not so good customers, and then you've got some that you got to hold hand. And helping our team members understand that any one of these customers sometimes can fall into any one of those categories at any time. So and it's okay, it's normal, it's part of the business, and still, either way, we're still there to serve them.
Well, and that's how your interest rate and those kind of things, it's baked in because you know that you're going to have some you're going to have these that don't finish the cycle of their loan. But we just I like that. It's like letting your team know that it's this is the industry that we're in, and and I see sometimes dealers, and I hear that it's like, I'm tired of getting taken advantage of. I'm tired. And it's like, what are you focusing on? When you're like, I'm so tired of this rat race and that there's so many screwy, rotten customers out there and all that. And it's like, what are you focusing on? Are you focusing on that sliver? Are you focusing on how we're able to help this other 30%? Are you focusing on this is the successful side? I mean, it's like, are you focusing on the negatives? Or are you focusing on the positives? And how is that affecting your team as you go down this rabbit hole of, and we were talking earlier that, we see stuff on social media where it's just like painting our customers in this really, really, really just awful negative light. And it's like, it's people don't know better, that they don't have the resources that those that are passing judgment on them do. there's so much attached to that
Well,
that it's just like, let's be compassionate.
Well, you use the example of our kids. The reality is, even our kids, they will make mistakes.
Yeah.
And so I think it's really a question of
Yeah.
how do we respond to that, and how do we approach it. And there will still be in that segment about if we're going to, respond negatively. It's kind of that thing about the way we view the customer, and how do we want to react? That is, and plus it's dealing with exceptions rather than rules. That's not the typical customer, right, Ken? Our typical customer is not, the troublemaker. They're not out to take advantage. There are few that are irresponsible. Sure, we have to work with them and help them kind of work through some stuff and get caught up. And, it's part of it. My feeling is we talk through these things about how much time should I spend. I think we can be guilty of falling into a place where we say, if that collector spends an extra 5 minutes on the phone with this, with 30% of our customers, that's not good use of our time, the cost of our time. But I think of it as, look, maybe let's think about it as an investment, not a direct cost of it. And I think the phrase I used last night is kind of a necessary cost of business if we really want to hear our customers out. And part of the humaning thing is just let people feel heard. It's not that we have to do something immediately to solve the problem that they describe, but just let them explain what's going on. They want
to. Is your experience, Ben, when people are hit a hard time? You talked about, and George actually asked, describe as being what do you describe as being a resource? And so, Ken, earlier you just kind of listed this list of things that you have with your collectors have, like, are you having a problem with this? And that there are resources, community resources.
Yeah, community resources, yep.
To be able to help with that. But do you find it's how were you able, when a customer is having a setback, or, whatever it is, they a lot of times go radio silent.
Yes.
Right?
That's exactly.
And they go radio silent. Why? Why are they going radio silent?
I believe it starts when that happens. It's a couple of things. It's either fear, shame, or blame. Good. And so it's one of those three things, or all three of them, right? Because they're afraid of losing their car. They're afraid of telling you what's going on in their life. They may have some shame about them. That, hey, I'm a horrible person, or they might have some blame that, blaming it on the dealer, or, their circumstances, or, the weather, or whatever it is. So all those things are happening, and it kind of shuts them down, because like what you were talking about earlier is that when people go through a crisis, right? When they're in a crisis, and a crisis to them could be something totally different for us, that we're thinking it's not a crisis for us, but to them it's a crisis. And when you're in a crisis, you can't see beyond what's right in front of you.
Amen, brother.
And it leaves them, like, I don't know what to do. I can't do anything, and leaves them feeling stuck. And so we as a organization, we got to understand that, okay, so if they're not communicating, something's happening. Right. And how can we support them? How can we encourage them? And that's why I talk a lot with my team about empowering our customers. And not just doing things for them, but empowering them so that they can take these particular actions or do certain things. And that's why we offer those resources, so that they can go out there and make the calls and ask for help, and stuff like that. So that once they learn to do that, and be resourceful, because the biggest thing isn't that we have to have money, or we have to have all these things. It's the biggest thing is being resourceful. And that's what our customers struggle with is where do I begin? Where do I get these resources from? And that's why the list that I was talking about earlier is not your typical list of stuff. It's the stuff that helps will help them mentally, helps them with the stuff that they're dealing with in their life, and not just with financial support, but with other things. And that's and that's why our it's a little bit, we've got to train our team members, to understand that.
So I would just say, Michelle, that, as a former dealer myself and working with a lot of really gifted managers over the years, like I can say, Ken, that if in addition to that list of local resources that you described, if I have in my head all these different ways that I know I can help the customer, and it might be loans to them, it might be saving money on parts, it might be, it could be on and on and on. I got a whole tool belt full of ways that I can help a customer. But I kind of always harken back to the thing about, there was a dealer a manager rather, that I remember working with in Iowa years ago, and he used to use the phrase, he said, if you'll come and sit in that chair, I'll see what I can do to help you, And then I used to adopt the phrasing at closing, and trained our people to kind of use the phrase like, there's not going to be anything that comes up in the time that you have this car finance with us that we can't figure out together if you'll just sit and work with us, talk to us. So same kind of thing, whether it's sit in the chair, hop on a FaceTime, it's like, there's not going to be anything come up that we can't work through together. So I'm trying to dispel the fear part that you're talking about. But I also think the relationship equity is huge. And I think we can establish some of that on the sales side. We can make that a separate topic, Michelle, because I think there are times that you can come back and there are ways that we can have a conversation as opposed to having a credit app come in, we score it, we approve it, the customer comes in, they barely spend 30, 45 minutes signing the stuff and off they go. We didn't really get to know them, and they didn't get to know us and how we do business, right? So the question is, how do we kind of cover that? And there's some very specific things that can be done in the sales process, and more specifically in the approval and closing process. And so I think that's something we can bring back in terms of, how to establish some degree
ways
of
to
relationship
establish
equity.
trust in the sales process.
Well, just in us as a company. It's like when in the process, we can establish some level of trust, and there's some very specific things. It's like a whole separate conversation, but I do think that serves us well in the collection side. And before we wrap up, I got some stuff I prepared. It's like a 7-point thing. This was for an article, and I'll just give the high points quickly, and we can expand on these later. But I put together 7 points, Ken, that were sort of the basis of an article of how to have success in collections. And so these are the 7 C's that I put together. So the first C is compassion. Like, how do we bring compassion to our collection approach? Or are we, when a customer's past due and they're scared, like you just talked about, do we call them and say, I need your payment by 6 o'clock Friday or else? Is that the tone of the thing?
Or are we saying, hey, that if something has happened and you've hit a roadblock, I know it can be really scary to talk to us about this, and recognize and verbalize that you may be feeling scared. You may be or you may be feeling powerless, or you may be feeling, and what a great thing for a collector making a phone call is to say something we understand that these are things that you might be feeling this, or you might be feeling this, but it's
to Crystal Guayle's point. It's like, it's not just what you say, it's how you say it. So it's like, it's a little bit of tone of voice, right? Ken, it's like it's not just the actual language, but the tone of voice that we choose is going to illustrate, should you be scared to talk to me? Do I want to return your phone call? Or, if you're calling me, Ken, do I want to return your phone call? You sound like you're angry. I don't know if I want to talk to you today. Right. So it's like tone of voice matters. So I think if we bring a compassionate approach to if we're leaving a voice message, does it sound like we want to try to work something out, or does it sound like we are demanding a car payment?
Yeah.
And so I think this is part of it. The next one would be connection. And Michelle and I talk a lot about engagement. I think if you can stay connected and maintain some sort of relationship, and because they need to get to know us.
It's also hard to have a conversation with someone that's hit a roadblock that you've never had a conversation with before.
True. I think when you face a crisis, it's better if you've already had some degree of relationship, so they can feel comfortable talking to you, right? And we can think about teenagers. I mean, the same thing with your kids. Like, do they really trust? Is there a real connection there? And then cooperation is another one. Back to all the stuff, all the different tools and ways to cooperate and help and bend and be flexible. I've always talked about a bend without breaking approach to collections, and be flexible is just part of what I think helps us to have success. Next one would be communication, which is also part of the the connection piece. I think it goes both ways. I think we need to, have an outreach of communication that is not just, hey, your car payment's due, right? We need to be better, and this is where we can be better. Another one's just consistency. Like, people need to, if they want to trust us and feel comfortable doing business with us and referring friends and family, I think we need to show consistency that we care. We show we care every day. We bring the same attitude to customer relations, and we treat everybody with dignity and respect. And so we got to be consistent in that. Next one is clarity. When we can have clarity around the thing, especially
understandings and things like that.
Yeah. And where this comes into mind for me is like, it's common for customers to come and do business with us. And so imagine, Ken, at your dealership, you're meeting a customer today for the first time. Well, they may have done credit business in the past. Maybe I'm in a buy here, pay here dealership near you, but the experience with them may have been very different than it's going to be with you. So I think this is our opportunity to create tremendous clarity as the customer steps in, what to expect.
Yeah.
And that's going to help them to be successful. That's going to help us to have a better relationship along the way. And so clarity is a big, and then the last one for me is convenience. Let's just make it easy for the customer to pay. Like they have enough.
That is another. Yeah, that's something that is just like, really, you're going to make it hard.
Yeah. And I have that, and we're, not that Michelle and I are the typical customer here, but we're human beings navigating life like everybody else. And some of the stuff around managing utilities and so, can be so frustrating. They just make it so difficult.
What
to
a
get on and make
beautiful
payment.
Role in a dealership. We've talked about this before. How many of our dealerships have a customer advocate in their team that is there to help, like really with those like we're having come in and talk to our customer advocate. They can walk you through all the stuff, or it's just and someone that they're introduced to at closing. This is your advocate. If you've got a problem and you need help with this or with this or with this, they're the person to call. And so they're not a collector because they don't like, a lot of our customers just like, it's a collector. But this is Amy. I'm your customer advocate. And, I know that whatever.
Yeah.
Totally.
And they don't really talk about car payments unless the customer asks. So there's some stuff. That's new stuff. That's new territory for us. But I mean, something we started advising dealers to, some of them implemented it with some success. And so it's something that we just are recognizing a need for, there to be somebody that the customer can feel comfortable talking to and who's on their side. It's like, and at the end if we can't find solutions for the customer, then it can end badly for us. And so we have a financial interest in supporting the customer and helping them to be successful. But I think the first part of this is really just, what is our lens? What do we think about the customer that we're going to work with every day?
I wanted to share one more thing from George, because I just really appreciate George Spatz, his perspective. And he's like, great point about what may be a crisis for them may not be one for us. The difference is often the difference of perception rather than perspective. The latter is looking at something from their point of view. So it's that it's, I love that when you brought in a crisis happens, and it just, and it may be my boyfriend just came back and he beats me up. And so I shut down and I can't function. I mean, it can be something as
it can also be something small.
It can be something small.
Can't access my bank account or whatever. Right?
Exactly. I mean, it's any number of things. And so if we just approach our customers with compassion and empathy as much as we can, and not try to look at from their perspective, but not from our perception. And I look at that perception, and that's what's your story? What are your filters when you're looking at someone else? What are your beliefs that are interfering with connecting with the person that you're sitting across the table from?
Yeah. And so, we've seen that happens, that people who work in collections, they can get a little bit jaded, right? Frustrated, especially when they take it personally, and it's a difficult job anyway, right? And even if you're just working with people and dealing with difficult stuff, it's a difficult job, no doubt. I think in order for us to have people stay on in a collection role, I think if we kind of start with philosophy here, I think, and go back to the culture for you as a dealer principal, it's like when you start with philosophy and you build all of your policies and procedures around a certain philosophy, and it ties a lot to the things we're talking about here, is our philosophy and approach to the customer that we serve. And then we write our policies and procedures accordingly, and we hire as well as we can according to that culture and philosophy. Then, I always say when we hire people, my hope is that we're going to hire people. We can't prepare them for every single scenario they're going to face, like what the situation is going to be on the phone when the next collection call comes in. We can't prepare them for every single scenario. But when we can have broad policies and we can give gifted people the ability to solve problems and to first listen, it's what we talked about in our meeting last night. I can't begin to solve the problem as a collector until I can listen, make sure I fully understand what's going on. So now it's back to the thing about it may not be the most efficient use of my time in terms of dollars and cents cost, but certainly it's effective potentially in terms of what it can yield for us.
If you save a contract, is it worth the extra 20 minutes?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. How much time do you invest in selling that car if you repo the car and then you have to spend money?
It's just like, who cares if they're spending a half an hour with one person? You know, that may save a contract.
Well, it's just it's philosophy and attitude that we bring.
A repo costs thousands of dollars.
Yeah, for sure.
Time and money, you know.
So talk to them for a week. It's still going to save us money.
Oh yeah.
You know, I wanted to say something. You know, Michelle, you were talking about earlier that, you know, sometimes, you know, what we do in working with these customers, it can be draining. You know, we can be left at the end of the day or at the end of the week, or our collectors would be left with feeling exhausted and drained. And one of the things that I've, you know, done and I've implemented into our, you know, SOPs is that, you know, is to fill our cups and fill our team's cup. You know, because when we're pouring out into these customers all the time, you know, it can be draining. So we've got to fill our own cups, you know, constantly. You know, one of the things I talk about is that we need to fill our cups so much that we're overflowing onto a saucer and we're letting our customers drink from the saucer instead of our cup, so that we're not feeling so drained all the time. Good. Well, how do we fill our cups? Well, you know, one of the things that I encourage is, you know, meditating or reading, you know, or, gratitude, gratitude thoughts, you know, thinking about the things you can be grateful for every morning. And so, you know, we got to pour into ourselves and fill our own cup, you know, so that at the end of the day, we're not feeling so tired or exhausted, because, you know, that, I mean, it can be, you know, an exhausting job.
I have to add something. I'm sorry, honey.
I have something to add too.
Okay.
But you go.
That as a dealer, and, you know, we know the stress that our collectors go through. You know, when you talk about filling your cup, you know, personal experience, it is so important that we keep our cup full. And sometimes that's something as much as like a massage.
Oh yeah.
Going and getting a massage. And so, you know, how much would that cost a dealer to say, you know what, we're going to treat you guys to just go. This is who we've contracted with, make an appointment, go and get a massage, like after a really hard day or whatever. It's just like, go fill your cup, go fill your cup.
I thought when Ken started in that, he was talking about, you know, he measured his collection room for a hot tub to see if they could put a hot tub in the
Well, I mean, Rudy is like, we have a ball pit like Google.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Or no, not we. Have a ball pit like Google. Play. I mean, playing is also a way of filling your cup, and when you're playing together. So, all right.
We should wrap up.
What else?
We run a little long.
Yeah. So, such a great conversation.
Yeah. Ken,
it was great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Important stuff.
I hope we can have you back again.
Oh yeah, looking forward to it.
Awesome. Excellent. All right, I'm going to put you backstage, and if you'll stick around for just a second so we can say a proper goodbye after we're done, and then thank you. Thank you. Okay. Wow.
That was, we just don't get a chance often enough to get that deep into the stuff. But I think for dealers that are new, it's important for them to hear that. And I used to say, Ken will appreciate this, I used to say to dealers and working with them that if you could go sit in a dealership, if you could go to Tommy Brandis's dealership, just sit in the corner, just sit in one of the chairs in the lobby for 3 hours and just listen to the conversations on the phone and at the cashier window, which is not as big a thing as it once was, but the actual conversations with customers. If you could listen to that for a few hours, you get a much better feel for what it's going to be like.
That's
to be a
actually,
dealer.
yeah, well, that's one of the things that we've,
Right.
with new dealers coming in, it's like, you got a dealer in the area that's good, and go and sit on their, with their collectors on a Friday.
Yeah.
That'll give you a really good idea about what to expect and how a good collector
And then let's
will
talk on
take care of
Saturday
that.
and see if you still want to be in this business, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Hey, everybody, thanks so much for joining us. We just really appreciate you giving the time, and sometimes we go a bit over 30 minutes, but hey, great content, great comments today. We really appreciate it. Again, Ken, thanks so much for joining us. Have a great day, and we will see you guys on Friday.